So in today's episode, we have a review of a classic. This one actually came out in 1981. It's so hard to imagine that it's more than 40 years old. Of course, by Yves Saint Laurent. This is the classic Kouros. I've never reviewed it. I'm excited to give you my thoughts on it finally, so make sure to stay tuned. Now, before I begin my fragrance review of Kouros by Yves Saint Laurent, and I tell you all about this classic of a scent, I do want to mention that if you are a fan of fragrance-related content, please do consider supporting this channel by subscribing to it. Please make sure to enable all notifications by clicking on the bell, and give this video a thumbs up if you take something of value from today's review. Now, of course, this fragrance was composed by Pierre Bourdon. Pierre Bourdon has composed many fragrances throughout the years, including Cool Water by Davidoff. And with this particular fragrance, of course, they went in a darker direction. And you think about the 80s, you think about these classic masculine powerhouse fragrances. And of course, I do want to mention that if you are interested in picking up this fragrance or any discounted designer or niche fragrance, you may do so at perfumeonline.ca. They actually sent this bottle to me for review, so thank you so much for that. I've actually been sitting on this bottle now for about 3 months, and so I'm finally getting around to reviewing it. So thank you for the opportunity. All of the links are going to be down below. Not affiliate links. I don't get any kickback from them. But in any case, this fragrance is an earthy powerhouse scent. There is carnation, there's civet, there's leather, there's honey, there's resins, a bit of citrus in the opening as well. And this is just a beautiful DNA that I think a lot of people who were born in the 80s or who wore fragrances religiously in the 80s, they probably have some really cool associations with this one. Of course, there's also a contrasting narrative out there, that being that this smells like a urinal cake, or that this smells like a bathroom, or, you know, it does contain civet. Civet is an animalic note. I think you have to have a certain amount of appreciation for these types of animalic ingredients in order to fully appreciate what is going on here from an olfactive perspective. I actually have owned for a couple years now Lapidus Pour Homme, and that fragrance also has honey and civet, and it has a very similar genetic makeup, if you will. So I've gotten used to that one, and I just think that the honey kind of adds like this dulcet tone to the fragrance that makes it more agreeable on my skin. And certainly there's something quite similar happening with this one, but I'm also able to pick up on a variety of different ingredients and elements found within the note pyramid, including the carnation, including some of the earthy notes, including the warmth of the resin and the spiciness of the leather. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention all of the aromatic components in here, like the clary sage, so on and so forth. So yeah, let's just go ahead and jump into the review. Let's start things off with a quick look at the presentation. So, of course, when you spray this on for the first time, you're going to get this overdose of citrus. So it opens up very bright, very flavorful. You're going to get like a hodgepodge of citrus in the opening. Not quite able to say, oh, I'm getting bergamot or grapefruit or yuzu or whatever else. You're just going to smell a lot of citrus, which is great, right? So I'm getting that bright, citrusy overtone from this fragrance, which is really enjoyable. But right away, the honey and the leather come into the picture. And there's a touch of civet in there as well. Now, civet comes from the civet cat, and they do not use natural civet. It's 100% synthetic, but of course it is an animalic ingredient, and so it can have a bit of a musky, some might even say a funky smell about it. Now, I do think that it's very cleverly disguised, and of course, given the fact that it is a synthetic ingredient, yes, it can, you know, maybe have a profile that is not as agreeable for some, but for me, I kind of tune it out in the sense that, not that I'm like ignoring it or I'm in denial that it's there. I know it's there and I'm fully aware of its presence. I just think that it blends so well with some of the sweeter ingredients and the spicy ingredients that it kind of adds like this mysterious element in the dry down. And to be honest with you, it's not just in the dry down. You're gonna smell it after like a minute or two of spraying this fragrance on. So it still kind of has like this honey-like sweet quality about it, but then there's something very carnal, very visceral, very natural and organic residing in the base, which I think is really the standout point of this fragrance, right? You're also going to get an aromatic quality in the opening, so it's very like bright and gentlemanly, and it has a certain freshness about it. I would say that Lapidus Pour Homme is more animalic than this one. And so in my opinion, right, if you can tolerate Lapidus Pour Homme, I have a bottle somewhere here, you can definitely tolerate Kouros by Yves Saint Laurent. Now, I've always been a huge fan of Body Kouros, right? That fragrance has a bit of a licoricey vibe, composed by Annick Menardo, one of my favorite perfumers. And I could also compare the aroma to Lempica's Eau Masculin. So it kind of has like that licoricey, kind of a sweet, unconventional vibe about it. And so that's a bit more youthful, more playful, but this is like gentlemanly, you know, secure gentleman, a bit up there in age. I'm not saying, you know, an old person, but of course, if you wore this as a teenager or 20, 30 something year old in the 80s, specifically in the early 80s when it came out, we're talking 40 years ago, right? And so, you know, this is going to be that kind of a signature scent, if you will. But I'm really enjoying this one. I'm rather young, I'm still in my 30s, but I have an appreciation for the classics, and which is why I've been collecting many of them and why I've been purchasing so many of them recently, because I really want to, I guess, expose myself to as many, you know, different genres, varieties, and decades of perfumery as possible. And I think this is an absolute masterpiece released by Pierre Bourdon. Now, there is a bit of a caveat here, that being that if you want to smell modern, right, this is probably not the fragrance that I would recommend for you, right? A lot of the fragrances that are on the designer side of things on the market currently possess a lot of ambroxan or tonka bean, you know, the coumarin heavy bases, and a lot of them get on the sweeter side of things, or they might utilize a little bit of cinnamon to kind of spice things up, make it a little bit darker, but still retain that sweetness. Here, you're dealing with a totally different beast, totally different animal. And so, you know, this is the type of fragrance that I smell when I want to have an image, if you will, because I wasn't born in 1981, when I want to have an image of what it was like, you know, towards the former half of the 80s, that decade. I was born in the 80s, but in the latter half. And so, classic scent, you are going to get a little bit of that carnation, which also has a bit of this floral, rosy, minty quality about it, but it's really that spicy leather in the base with the honey and the civet that really makes up the majority of this composition. And of course, the earthiness of the patchouli. Who can resist a good patchouli in a chypre fragrance? Some, you know, having that mossy sort of green base always kind of gives a fragrance that defining characteristic that would allow it to be classified as a chypre. But beautiful scent. I personally love it. Hard to recommend in the year 2022, but if you're a bit of an older gentleman, you like these types of fragrances very much like me, I would love to have it in my collection as a reference point. And yes, I have worn it from time to time as well, and I will continue to wear it too. Let's go ahead and finish things off with my overall assessment. So first up, in terms of the uniqueness and the overall smell, boy, I bet during its time, it certainly was a unique fragrance released in 1981 by Pierre Bourdon. And the overall smell is one that still smells of class and refinement and sophistication. And, you know, surprisingly, the performance is very good. However, I just don't think it's the type of fragrance that I would personally recommend for like a high school student or something like that. But who knows? You know, when I was in high school, I graduated high school in 2005, I was wearing Paco Rabanne Pour Homme, which is a very heavy sort of oak moss type of a scent. I was also wearing Givenchy Pie, and don't even get me started. And so I think it really all depends on the individual, but I think this is a classic. I think it's a fragrance that ought to be in everyone's collection. If it's not in your collection, at the very least, I think it's a fragrance that you 100% must sample. And if you can get it for a really good price, I know perfumeonline.ca has some great prices. I would recommend you check it out. Longevity on this one is 7 hours. Projection on this one was great for the first hour of application. It radiated a little bit beyond the arm's length. It didn't start to sit closer to the skin until about that 5 to 5.5 hour mark. Versatility on this one is really good. I think this one definitely gives off more of a formal vibe, so I don't know if I would wear it casually, but I don't see the issue in wearing it casually because it's so affordable nowadays. I think this one is great for all times of the year. It does lean a little bit masculine, and like I said, in terms of that age disparity, I can see somebody who's a little bit older enjoying enjoying this one to its full potential. Presentation on this one is timeless and classic, and everybody recognizes this bottle, the color, the shape, the name, everything about it. And of course, it does have like the statuesque ceramic feel and look to the bottle. My final verdict on it is, if you want some fragrances that are exemplary of the types of fragrances that were released in the 1980s, it goes without saying that this is probably the most iconic release that came out of the year 1981 on the men's side of things in the perfume industry. Nothing can match the reputation and the history of Kouros by Yves Saint Laurent. Definitely a game changer in the industry, and you've seen a lot of fragrances follow suit and take notes from Kouros. Now, I don't think it's outdated, I don't think it's anachronistic, but I do think it is evocative of decades past, and it's certainly a beautiful memento for anyone to have in their collection. And so I'm happy that I got around to acquiring it. There you have it, ladies and gents. Thank you so much for watching this video. I do appreciate it. I hope you took something of value from this review. If you did, please do consider supporting this channel by subscribing to it. Of course, make sure to enable all notifications by clicking on the bell. Give this video a thumbs up. It would greatly assist with the YouTube algorithm. And of course, if you are interested in purchasing discounted designer and or niche fragrances, you may do so at perfumeonline.ca. They have really good customer service, 100% authentic products, and their communication is amazing. So links are going to be down below. Thanks for watching. Love you all. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.